Flex MFG JobShop by ASC is an ERP solution tailored to the specific needs of the custom manufacturing industry. By extending Acumatica's kitting and distribution capabilities, Flex MFG JobShop is able to offer placeholder items, dynamic bills of materials, labor and material templates, and repair functionality that incorporates seamlessly into Acumatica's order management, inventory control, and financial modules. For this video, we will be using the example of a company that does custom metal fabrication for vehicles. There may only be a few raw materials being managed, and operation steps may be predictable. However, cut or finished specifications may be unique to every customer or even every job. As such, this company would require the use of placeholder items to quote and customize items that do not exist yet, as well as the dynamic bill of materials in order to build each item to the exact needs of their customers. We'll begin by entering a new quote. Once we identify the customer this quote is for, we can add a SKU to the details of the quote and specify the quantity needed. Since we're going to build and quote this to a specific order, we don't need to worry about pricing the quote yet. Next, we'll mark the item as requiring a dedicated work order. Now we can generate a work order to be associated with the quote. Within the associated work order is where we will begin to build and price the new item. You'll notice that this work order is linked to the quote we just created and that the work order itself is in the status called quote. This is to make sure that the work order won't be accidentally pushed to purchasing or production before its associated quote has been approved. Since we generated this work order from an existing SKU, there are a few materials already listed from the bill of material. Since our work orders are dynamic, we won't be restricted to these materials, however. If a particular material won't be needed, we can remove it from the work order. We can just easily add materials that might be needed. In this case, the customer specifications might require us to quote for a product that doesn't exist yet in our environment. To accommodate this need, we'll use a placeholder item. Placeholder items allow us to edit line details and specify costs, to provide quoting capabilities without needing to first set up a new item. Our work orders also allow us to capture labor associated with production. We can identify labor costs manually, or we can import a list of labor costs that we may have saved as a template from a previous job. Templates can be used to import labor or materials to a work order. As changes are made to the work order, our costs are being recalculated. We can review under the Costs tab and even use these estimated costs to price our quote using a markup percentage. Before we send the quote to our customer, we can check inventory levels of the material components of this work order. If any items need to be purchased or produced, we will be able to see how many require purchasing or production. If purchasing is needed, the vendor lead time will be used to calculate when we would be able to begin production of the work order. At this point, you can provide your customer with not only a reliable estimate for this new item, but also a realistic production timeline. Our quote price has been updated from the work order and can now be shared with the customer. Once the customer replies with approval, copy your quote to a sales order with the click of a button. All details of the quote are carried over to the sales order, including the associated work order. If we review the work order again, we'll see that status has been updated from quote to planning. Although the status has changed, the bill of materials is still dynamic, and if it was necessary to make any more changes, we could do so. In our case, we will need to replace our placeholder item with the newly set up component before we complete planning. Once content with our details, we can complete planning and leave it in the hands of our purchasing department to procure the needed raw materials. Our Production Requirements Processing Center offers us MRP functionality to procure what is needed to complete our work orders. The Processing Center allows us to view aggregate demand for materials across all upcoming work orders. We can sort and filter by any of the parameters or column headings shown here. Before processing any lines, we can run our requirements report to see what needs to be purchased for however many work orders are selected. Depending on internal purchasing priorities or external factors like vendor lead time, We can opt to process as many or as few lines as desired to generate purchase orders for the required materials. Once processed, Acumatica will create a PO for the appropriate vendor, which can be delivered to them using Acumatica's native automation tools. Once received in, production can begin for the finished good. We do have the option of recording labor consumed directly into production order. However, Flex MFG JobShop also provides barcoded travelers, which can be used on the shop floor to scan in and out of jobs. From the shop floor, employees can use the time capture screen to scan into the relevant work order and record time directly against each step of the work order. The access code employees use to track their time does not consume a user license, for a more efficient clock in and clock out. These tools can provide you with the exact insight into your cost of goods sold. However you choose to record your labor, Flex MFG can meet your needs. With our raw materials received in, let's head back to our production workspace and open up the work order we've been working on. With all of our raw materials now on hand and available, we can release this work order to production. With this work order now released, you'll see that we have the ability to quick complete it, which essentially backflushes time and material. Since this is the first time we have built this finished product, we will take the extra step to record actuals. We are able to record actuals because this work order is dynamic and still able to be edited, even in a released status. Optionally, we also have the ability to record partial completions against this work order. Doing so will allow us to ship ahead and invoice for already completed work. This could be necessary for especially large orders or in a scenario where there was enough raw materials on hand to complete production on some, but not all finished goods. That way, production could begin while still waiting for the rest of the raw materials to be purchased and received. As production is completed, we have the ability to record scrap, which will be posted as a separate transaction. Because of Acumatica's tight integration, this will create both an inventory adjustment and a journal entry in your general ledger. Once the job has been completed, mark the work order as such. The finished goods will be added to inventory and all raw materials will be consumed. With the job behind us, we will also be able to view our actual costs and compare them to our estimates. Accelerate your custom manufacturing business today with Flex MFG by ASC. For more information or to schedule a demo, contact us today at clouderpsoftware.com.